Hi, I'm Dr. Alexandra Katahakis, Clinical Director of Center for Healthy Sex in Los Angeles, and today you're in for a real treat. Today I had a conversation with Paul Shaw, also known as Mr. Shaw, and Paul is a pro-dom. In other words, he works for hire with women specifically who want to be dominated sexually. So now if you don't know about the world of BDSM, you are really in for a ride here, listening to Paul's story of how he started out as a born-again Christian and made his way to being not just a pro-dom, but a sex educator and someone who's really pro positive sexuality with both males and females. Paul is, I think, a pioneer in some ways because he's talking to us about how we take responsibility for our own sexuality and what it means to be masculine today and vulnerable at the same time. And what it also means to have consent and how consent changes as the sexual act changes. So buckle your seatbelt and hold on tight because you're going to enter the creative mind of Paul Shaw. Did you see that video of that woman who walked through New York for 10 hours? Yeah, that's a pretty powerful video.
And so many times men just don't understand that the simple act of walking into a parking deck is a completely different experience than it is for them. Like everything, being in an elevator alone and a guy walks in and you're by your everything. Yeah. And I think men have to understand the heightened sense of awareness. And in the video I talked about how what I said is as a woman's walking through the world, let's say just down the street walking to work, when a man calls her or hey baby or whatever, I call that an energetic hook. That guy wants something from her. He's trying to get a reaction, or he needs something and he's thinking this woman's, and I call them energetic hooks. And I said, by the time that woman walks into work and you say good morning and she gives you the cold shoulder, it's not because she's a bitch. Right. It's because she's had 6 energetic hooks put in her.
Well, they're assaults. They're literally assaults on the nervous system. So then how did you start to get into this work you're doing with empowering men and also women, it sounds like, too? Yeah.
Well, it's a mix of, I got into BDSM and started learning more about that and started understanding consent. That was a big deal in the community.
So tell me about that. Like, what was the impetus for you getting involved in that community?
Well, we had gone to a couple of swing parties and we had met several couples that were into it, and we would go home and they would play. They might have had a cage by their bed or they would tie her up, and I got interested. But then after she left, I started dating a dominatrix, a pro dominatrix. Right. And she took me to a class at Stockroom, which is a fetish store, and I took my first BDSM 101 class. I took her to a polyamory class they had over there because she was curious about that. And that's how I started getting into it. And I started taking more and more classes. And then I started having experiences with women where they were like, wow, you need to do this. Like, not just that, but I would do body work. I would do, I know I can't use the word sexological because it's trademarked, but I was doing that kind of work. Yeah, right. A lot of I call it secular tantra, G-spot massage. And one of the things I started realizing with women is that if I could create a safe environment for them to start healing themselves and create this bubble where they could just express themselves in shame-free sexuality, just crying, orgasms, female ejaculation, and then tears and cathartic releases were happening. And many women were like, you need to start doing this. People would pay you for this.
Oh, wow.
And then Hudzi Han is one of my mentors. Sure. And she got me into it and helped me get on with the dungeon. But one of the things I started realizing is I started just talking to a lot of women, especially when I would open up, they would open up, especially after some of the experiences they had, and they would just start telling me about everything. Right. And I started understanding a lot more about women. I started understanding that we as men really don't understand women.
Yeah, I mean, something you said is just super important, I think, because I've always said to men that I think sex is really kind of the woman's experience, and that women will do just about anything sexually if they feel safe. Of course, this is heterosexual couples I'm talking about. And men are often dumbfounded when I say that, but I don't think women are uptight or rigid or prudes or frigid or any of that. They just have to feel safe. It's evolutionary. It's biological. Absolutely. And once we feel safe, it's sort of like the sky's the limit. If you're going to take care of me and I know I'm not in danger, then
what do you want?
Right? There's the lampshade.
Yeah, I always tell men, and this may be hyperbolic, and you might need to correct my grammar. I always say, men, if you can create an environment where women feel safe, they will give you everything.
It's true.
Every part of their body,
right.
They'll just give it to you gladly, freely, and say,
right.
You don't have to take it. You don't have to make her. You don't have to trick her. You don't have to get her drunk.
Exactly.
They'll just do it.
Right.
And but I think men.
But men have to be in their integrity when they walk into this world also. And I wonder how much of your Christian upbringing informs your integrity also, even though I know you said before that you were a jerk or you were a dick.
I meant I was a dick in that, I'm going to try to take away your rights to have an abortion. I'm going to try to make sure homosexuals don't have rights. I'm going to try to shut down strip clubs because I want to go and because it,
and I don't want you to go.
That's right. That's right. Well, in Christian Islam, it's the fault of the woman.
Yeah.
The woman is the one that's caused it. I had a female pastor one time tell me, if women wouldn't spread their legs, we wouldn't have sin.
Oh my gosh.
And then in the Muslim world, the women, if you don't cover up, you're going to cause me to sin, so it's your fault.
Right, it's your fault.
So,
I'm powerless over you.
Right.
But that's on the bad side of it.
Right.
On the good side of it, do those values inform your integrity as a pro-dom or in the ways in which you work with women?
Christianity?
Mm-hmm. I'm just talking about some of the tenets of being respectful and just in your integrity. Maybe not, but it was just popped into my head.
I gotta think. It's sad that I have to think about it. I think as far as being honest, that's kind of a big deal.
Well, it's at the foundation of what you're saying is important in what you do.
Well, but the problem is if you say something like, hey, I'm into this, you get it ew or gross or that's sinful or how dare you, that's so, that's of the devil. Right. Or that is, for a woman to want sex, outside of marriage is just...
patently wrong.
It's not only patently wrong, it is what's causing our problems in America.
Okay.
It is the cause of our issues, not just wrong.
It sounds like what I was hearing is that your ethos is about taking care of women or tending to the feminine, let's put it that way.
Yes.
And when the masculine tends to the feminine, then nature's imbalanced, just as when the feminine even perhaps worship or tends to the masculine, then nature's imbalanced.
Yeah.
And people get freaked out about that language because it sounds subjugating, but it's not. It's about tending to. So I was thinking maybe some of the good values you had from your upbringing help inform that.
I'm trying to be honest with you, and nothing is coming to mind
so maybe
right
I'm
now.
Off base. Then where did you come up with this level of integrity and this level of knowing?
Well, I always want, when I was I was in the Marine Corps, I was a sergeant in the Marine Corps, and they always beat into us integrity.
Then that's
as an officer, you want to have honor and integrity in that. In fact, that's kind of where I came up with the thing I wanted to be. I wanted to be a virgin until I got married before I became a Christian. It was kind of weird because I wanted to be officer and a gentleman and all that other stuff. But I think you had mentioned taking care of women.
Yeah.
And so many men obviously think financially or whatever,
right.
or getting her off. And one of the things I always want to say when I say taking care of women, I mean creating that space, creating that communication, because men have to understand that many women are gun shy. Many men don't understand what women walk through in this world. I was saying earlier that just the act of getting on an elevator is a completely different experience. Walking down the street or going into a parking deck, it's a completely different experience. Right. And I had one dominatrix one time. She goes, "Oh, I think I'm going to have you. I think I'm going to hire you to flog me. I really want to get flogged, and I won't have to worry about you trying to rape me." Wow,
right. Yeah, that I can actually relax.
Yes,
right?
Yes. And so one of the things is that if you create that environment, I always say, taking care of her is letting her know that things will stop when she needs it to stop, when she wants it to stop. Making sure that, because at first sometimes I'd be like, "Can I kiss you?" And I've had women go, "Just shut up and kiss me." And that's, we want to be consensual. We want to, oh, may I kiss you? And then women are like, just shut up and kiss me. Don't ask. And I'm like, wait, me too. Wait, yes. Hold on. And I've learned now that it's about how you ask and the way you ask it and reading the room. Sometimes I'll be like, you really want to kiss me, don't you? And then it's
that's different, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's the different energy. Say, may I kiss you? So it's kind of creating that environment where they know that their autonomy is going to be taken care of until they give it to you. And even, I always say, to women, I actually say this, I was in the middle of a threesome kind of thing, and with these two women that were lesbians, but they wanted to have a threesome, and we put this one woman in the middle, and we were making out, and all of a sudden I started realizing they weren't polyamorous, they just wanted to explore this in BDSM, right. And I noticed the top woman wasn't, and I noticed the bottom, and I was like, all right, y'all, I'm not feeling a hell yes right now. I know you all wanted this, but I'm going to pull back and say, hey, how about we just cuddle for a little bit, right. And let's not. And then the I call her the little one. She's 24, but right. She looked at me and said, but we're naked and we're already going. Is that okay? And I thought, oh, honey. I said, I could be fucking you for an hour. You could have had a dozen orgasms. I could be a minute away from coming, and you would think, oh, I really owe you, and you get to say no, and I have to stop. So people are always like, make sure our kids and people know that they get to say yes to who touches their body, but they also get to say yes of when they stop touching their body. And I really wanted to impress that upon her, that you get to decide if we stop or not. And I have to, but anyway.
I think that's super important, because there's this idea that consent is kind of this one and done thing. And what you're saying is it changes during the course of the sexual act.
Exactly.
It can change at any point where, okay, I'm done.
Yeah.
And that's really important, I think, in the climate that we're living in right now, because people don't understand sort of the fluid nature of consent.
Well, and I saw what was going on, and they were going to continue because we started.
Right.
And I could tell this had become not a hell yes. And to be honest with you, I try to come from a place of abundance. And so many men are like in scarcity. I got to get laid. So a lot of men who would be in scarcity here, like, I really want to get laid. All of a sudden, they're going to push through what they clearly see is that people aren't into it.
Right,
but I always tell men, know how to walk away. Know how to walk. She's not interested. Walk away. Just walk away.
So when you say you've learned a lot about men from the work that you do, is that one of the things that you've learned? Is that they keep going out of desperation?
Yeah. Well, especially, okay, so I am straight, predominantly straight, but I will session with men. And I've had a lot. It's very interesting. I really understand female sex workers now. And I understand what they go through, because a lot of men will call, or they'll try to get some time from you. You give them a minute or two, they get off a little bit, or they keep texting you, and you think they're going to book with you, and then they don't. And it's like, or they want it right now, and it's like, no, we need to set an appointment.
Right.
And so one of the things is I've learned a lot about how men straight bi. I have all kinds of different clients. I don't have sex with my clients, so it's not a thing.
Right.
But the thing is I've noticed a lot of men act out of scarcity. And a lot of men, when they're in the middle of a sexual experience, they're not connected to their bodies. One of the things I like to teach is sexual self-mastery, where men are connected to images, porn, or fantasy. They're never connected to their touch, their breath, their sounds, and they're not visualizing like energy coursing through there. So the tantric people kind of helped me kind of embrace that, and me being secular, I can take that and just, it's beautiful. And so many men are all about the orgasm, or all about the ejaculation, when they could sit there and be in this intense, beautiful pleasure for an hour without, and it's, well, yeah, I could talk about this all day.
Well, but I think it's important, because we are in a crisis right now with men not knowing where their sexuality is and what they're supposed to do and what's okay and what's not. And I think it comes from this sort of old-fashioned base way of coming on to each other and getting what I want and going after that. It's the conquest model.
Or from a movie. The woman pushes away and he grabs her and he kisses her and she's like, take me.
Right.
And it's also one thing, oh my mind, there it just went. You were talking about, I was talking about men know how to walk away. I like to say men need to learn how to, see, men are not sexually empowered. We talk about women being sexually empowered. Men, this whole patriarchal thing, it's affected men in a horrible way.
I know it has.
And the thing is men aren't sexually empowered, because a lot of times I've had a lot of women tell me, men go whoop really quickly because they're not confident in bed,
That's right.
or they're afraid they're gonna come too quickly, or they're gonna go into porn star mode, and
Right.
jackhammer.
Precisely.
And and there's a time and place for anything. Some women like the
Right.
jackhammer, but know how to mix it up. But anyway, the thing is because men are in their head, they're not focused on their partner. And they're so focused on getting this need met
Right.
when they can't be present.
They're also not focused on themselves, right?
Exactly. They're not focused on their own touch.
Right. Their own sensuality.
Right.
And they also are misconstruing, aggression with assertion and taking what they want. Jack Moran, in his beautiful book, Erotic Mind,
Mm-hmm.
talks about a sexual ruthlessness. And he's not talking about being a rapist. He's
Right.
talking about, like, if there's a piece of cake there, just sort of ruthlessly taking the biggest piece because you really want it.
Yeah.
And not worrying about the other. And so I think there is a responsibility that both genders have here. And we've got it so skewed and wrong.
Right.
And what you're saying is that if everybody starts to take responsibility for their own pleasure, if everybody's honest about their own pleasure,
Mm-hmm.
and they can talk about it, then you're in a different arena altogether.
Yes.
Then you're really in the field of the erotic, I think.
Mhm.
Not just the sexual or the fucking or the getting off.
Yeah. Because when you're in your head with images, or you're focused on this result or this future, you start building expectations.
Mhm.
You're not in the present. You've literally had your orgasm and you forgot about the last 20 minutes or 5 or 2 minutes or whatever. And a big thing is, you had mentioned the piece of cake. I like to say, I'm going to worship and devour you all at the same time.
Right.
I'm just going to, I think we need to understand that being carnal
Mm-hmm.
and sloppy and wet and stuff, that carnality, that I like to call myself a sensual primal dom. I mean, I could be a sadist. I mean,
Right.
I can go there, but that's my nature. And
So what do you mean by that? Can you be more explicit about a sensual primal dom?
sensual primal, like the whole devouring. I like to say sometimes, I usually say, I'm going to explore every square inch of your body, and I'm going to find places on you didn't know existed.
Ah, I see.
And one of the things I like to teach is you have your lips, you have your mouth, you have your tongue, you have your breath, you have your teeth, you have all these things, and it's almost like you've got an instrument, and you're playing, and you have different concert halls all up and down the body, and certain concert halls you can play like this, and you can play like that, and there's so many combinations. It's really sad that we, first of all, good luck getting not abstinence only education if you find a place where they're
Right,
not,
yeah.
and then good luck getting them to teach about pleasure,
right.
or consent. I think it's so important we teach our boys and girls about consent. And about pleasure, and we're just so afraid they're going to have sex if we teach them about sex.
I know. And they're having sex anyway, and they're hurting themselves and doing it in ways that are not, fun or enjoyable or anything like that.
I had this one young woman, she was in high school, and her mom, she was asking me questions about sex and sexuality, and I said she was like 15, and she said she's had sex 60 times with her boyfriend. I'm like, oh, okay,
Wow.
great, how is that?
Mhm.
And she said it was great, and they're having a good time. I said, are you using a condom? She's like, yeah. And I said, has he ever tried to get you to not use a condom? Oh, no. And I said, what happens if you get pregnant? She kind of stood there, and I was like, what happens if the condom breaks? And she said, well, I heard that I could use a Fireball with some cinnamon. And I'm like,
Oh my God.
this is a 15-year-old woman.
Yikes, yeah.
And she's in a very rural area where they are very
Yeah.
abstinence. A Fireball and cinnamon. And I said, who taught you that, my friends?
God.
And so don't tell me that our kids know about sex.
Yeah, that's frightening.
They know a lot about sex, but whether what they know is right or wrong, they don't have a clue.
Well, that's part of the contention I have with, there's a big movement on the internet with young people teaching young people about sex.
Mhm.
Like, teenagers have their own blogs or vlogs,
Mhm.
and it's like, oh my God, this is the blind leading the blind.
Exactly.
So, yeah, I mean, we have a long way to go with education for sure.
Yeah. I think there is a freedom in communication, consent, openness, your own. I always say, you as a guy need to learn how to be vulnerable.
Mhm.
But the problem is some guys, if they're vulnerable, the way they're vulnerable, you come off as not confident, or it is a very big turnoff to a woman if you are not balanced with strength and vulnerability
That's
together.
right. Yeah.
And I like to say you can't have true strength without vulnerability. So if you go into a place where you are vulnerable and open and like, I love this or I love that, or you can create that space, it gives you like a sexual freedom.
It does, right.
To just go wide open.
Sure.
And I like to say, I really do love it when a woman has been like, wow, this has been one of the best experiences. This has been, wow, I didn't know this was possible. And these are women in their 30s and 40s.
And what they're saying is, I didn't know my own self. That I just got to see myself through you. And that's an enormous gift of freedom.
Especially when they're like, what are you doing? No one's ever touched me there before.
Right.
I've had other sex educators who have been like, I've been with lots of doc-guys and doc-kinis. None of them ever touched me there. And I'm like, because they're doing Tantra. I'm doing Tantra and physical therapy and pelvic floor release and this and that, and I'm mixing it all together.
Yeah.
And I'm not just, I'm doing this. And so it's very lovely when women have had these experiences. It makes me feel like, okay, I'm on the right track at least.
So how do you, I would imagine that there are women that come to you that have had sexual trauma, and they either possibly are reenacting it in bad relationships, or they've never worked on it before or anything like that. So how does that work?
Women clients or lovers or?
Well, I'm talking about clients
okay.
Particularly. Like if a woman were to call you and hire you.
I have one particular client, she actually left a review and she talked about how like our session was better than therapy. She loves therapy, but therapy wasn't working for her.
Well, therapists can't touch her.
Right.
And the body is where the trauma is.
Exactly. And so she said, when I first called you, I felt like a loser because I was calling a sex worker for this help. And I said, that's a really sad thing in America. Sex workers do God's work, I think, a lot of times. I think sex workers sometimes keep marriages together because the guys can go out, know. But the thing is for a woman to need a sex worker, there's a lot of
shame.
Yeah. There's the guys have been getting happy endings. I don't give happy endings, but men have been getting happy endings for centuries, millennia, and a woman feels. But anyway. What was your question?
Well, I was asking about trauma.
Yeah, trauma. Okay. So one of the things, when I do negotiation, or even if I'm going to do body work, I ask them about triggers, things that have happened to you. We talk about, look, if something happens, you could get a trigger you didn't even know was there. We can uncover something. Your body's going to let something go, and you're going to be like sometimes I've touched women on the wrist, and all of a sudden something that happened to them 20 years ago just comes in full force. And I try to let them know that's okay.
Right.
It's totally okay. You're not broken. So many women, when they release trauma or they have a big cathartic release, they start crying. They feel embarrassed. I'm like, no, this is your body healing itself. Let it go. Right. But the thing is I create this environment where I communicate with them. What do you want? What do you need? And then one of the things I like to do, I'll do a thing. Okay, so can we do this little exercise?
Sure.
Okay, so right before I do body work, I know that a lot of times submissives or women that I'm getting ready to touch in a very intimate way, a lot of times they want to please the dom, or they'll let the man do things because they want to please them, even though they really don't want to do it, or it's a maybe. I always say, hey, you may not be a hell yes to this, but are you a hell yes to try? And you can always, are you a hell yes to try? Yeah, sure. So what I do is, a lot of women have never said no. So what I do is I say, may I hold your hand?
So I say yes.
Yes. And I'm going to start doing different things to you. And at any point, I want you to say no. It doesn't necessarily have to be you want me to stop, but just practice the word no. So may I stroke your hand?
Yes.
Okay. May I massage your hand?
Yes.
Okay. How does that feel?
Feels good.
Yeah. May I kiss your hand?
No.
Oh, thank you so much for taking care of yourself. I really appreciate you doing that. Okay, so I did a couple things there.
Right.
First of all, I took her on an exercise. I showed her that she had power.
Yeah.
And one thing that I've heard from a lot of submissives that I've done sessions with, especially a couple I've had a lot of sex workers use me because they can go and work. They're like pro dominatrixes, but they can explore their submissive side and no one's going to know about it.
Right. Yeah.
But the thing is I was flogging somebody or something, and something happened, and they called yellow for some reason or whatever, and I said, "Thank you so much for taking care of yourself. Let's go to here."
Right.
And she goes, it was really refreshing that you rewarded my yellow. You rewarded me taking care of myself.
Instead of shaming her.
Yes, or like, what's wrong? Why can't you, like, and it happens so many times with men when we're in bed and we're doing something and a woman's like, that hurts. And he's like, oh. Or, or, all right, well, let's try it this way then. Or,
that's such a personal affrut somehow,
yeah,
right? Or an ego bruise.
Or my other girlfriend doesn't have that problem.
Oh, that's the worst.
But I rewarded her taking care of herself.
Yeah, I see that.
And that, I think, is a big deal. She actually said, I was feeling so safe with you, but that took us to another level. You rewarded me for taking care of myself.
Yeah.
And so many women, when they're in bed, here's an exercise I think all men should do. All men should lay down on the ground, have their legs opened up, spread wide open, and have a woman sit there and just pound their bottom with their hips. Right. Let me tell you, you will understand very quickly when you're standing over a woman and you're getting ready to do whatever, the amount of, oh fuck, please connect with me. Like, I did an exercise and this woman was on top of me and she spread my legs open. I was wearing a kilt, by the way, so this was even more. And she, this was an exercise, all the men had to do it, and she was, pushing her hips into mine. And I just said, please don't stop looking at me. Please connect. Please don't take your eyes away from me right now. I need to connect with you.
Right, because it's really assaultive to the body without the connection.
Yeah.
Well, my sense of you is that you're very generous. Like you said, you come from a place of abundance, but there's also a generosity of how much you're giving of yourself. But there is a circular thing there. If you're giving, you're receiving, and so's the other person.
Right.
And that is going to build a charge, whether you call it a Kundalini charge or any kind of charge where there's an intersubjective field. And that's really powerful because that's changing the neurochemistry of the brain.
And along with that, when someone does have that cathartic release, when they're crying and they're just bawling, I'm like, I'm going to lick your tears now and I'm going to hold you and I want you to let it go. Yeah. Like, and I lick their tears to let them know that don't be embarrassed. I'm not going to tell you how to feel, but I'm trying to show you that you don't need to be embarrassed. I'm going to lick your tears to let you know that it's okay. So many women have told me, especially when I do the body work, they're like, good luck getting me out of my head.
Oh, wow. Well, that's quite a challenge.
Yeah,
right?
I'm like, all right. And it's just what I do. I don't sit there, I don't look at it as, okay, it's a challenge, because then you're in trouble. I was running a class with Ashley Manta, and she was doing a using your hands on genitals kind of class, and she had, oh my God, I can't forget it. She's one of the most famous porn stars in the world. She does a lot of education. Anyway, she was on the bed and I said, hey, when I'm trying to give a woman an orgasm, blah, 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 blah. And the porn star was like, you don't give me an orgasm. Right. I give myself an orgasm.
Thank you.
And it was like,
yes.
Oh, because I used to come from ego. I gave a girl 12 orgasms. I made her squirt. I did this. I did that. It was, when I heard that several years ago, it was like, whoosh. Now all of a sudden, when a woman pushes me away so she can finish herself off, I'm like, yay, go to the finish line, woo! And I try to tell men, you don't give an orgasm. You create an environment where she maybe gets out of her head, but feels relaxed, and then she can find an orgasm. Or a lot of guys get real, I can't tell you how many women have told me, like at the very end, they'll pull out a little bullet or a little vibrator to just get them over the edge. And men get so bent out of shape.
That's so interesting, because I had a guy tell me recently that, he didn't bring a woman to orgasm and he finished and she was so upset and offended and angry. And I was like, wait a minute, who's responsible for whose orgasm here? That's on her, really.
Yeah. Well, unless the guy, 30 seconds done, rolled over.
No,
bed,
he said it
wait
wasn't some comical fast thing at all. He said it wasn't like that. And so I think that's a really important point that I tell people too, is that everyone's responsible for their own orgasm as adults.
Well, and now, before where I would get really upset with myself if a woman didn't have an orgasm, now I can have sex all night. And most women are like, it was great. Even though I didn't have an orgasm, it was amazing, right? And so now I've learned to let go of that ego around the orgasm. Right. And I would rather, like, okay, it's time to go to therapy. Go for the Center of Sexual Health and go there, and they're gonna help you, because this isn't something I can help you with.
Sure, that might be a block in somebody's head, right? Or some fear, or who knows what.
Trauma, all kinds of other stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Is there anything else specifically about BDSM that you think people should know?
Yes.
Because there are a lot of myths about it.
Sure. Obviously consent's a big deal. I like to teach about get an education. I don't even spank until you've been taught how to spank. There's a specific way I've taken 2-hour classes on spanking and impact play. And I always say, get a class before you wield a flogger, before you get a sharp pointy thing, whatever. That's another thing I think everyone should do.
So you really have to know the anatomy and physiology of the body, right?
Absolutely.
So if you're not beating somebody's kidneys or
exactly.
hitting them in the head in the wrong way.
Yeah, if you were like, I know how to slap someone, I know how to choke someone. Choking is very edgy play. If you don't do it right, you can hurt somebody. You need to be trained how to do that. Also, if you do it wrong, you're going to take her way out of it. If you don't do a thing right, you could take her straight out of it. And the whole, if you don't choke her, well, please get training before you try to choke. But also another thing is I also teach, or I like to teach, Hudzy taught me this, is that let's say I'm having a thing with a lover and I'm like, do you want to have sex in the middle of this or whatever? And they go, no. I'm like, cool. And then if we get into the middle of the scene and she's like, fuck me, fuck me, fuck me, I'm like, nope. Because she's in subspace. I feel like she is drunk, or I said, let's end the scene.
Yeah.
And then maybe an hour later, we'll come back and revisit it. But right now, you're drunk. And I don't want 3 hours later to go, I didn't really want to have sex.
And you know what? This is what happens to people that get in trouble with sexual assault today.
They get
with
drunk.
This matter of consent. The women will say, yeah, I'm into rough play. And then they get into the middle of it and they're not really sure about what's happening, or they don't like it, or they say do more, and then afterwards they're like, oh my God, I didn't really want to do that.
Well, and they don't know how to take, the guy hasn't created this environment. I always tell new subs or anybody, I'm like, please take care of yourself. Please say something, even if you don't know your safety word, whatever, say something. Because if you don't teach that bottom, that it's okay to say, this isn't working just to please me, now you've set up a dynamic where she's like, because look, there's, fight, flight, or freeze. A lot of women, when they've experienced sexual assault, they just freeze and they allow it to happen. And what I learned, Lee Montavon, who's an amazing sex coach, she taught me this. When a woman freezes and quote unquote let something happen, that's, people are like, well, why didn't you fight back? Why didn't you run away? Why didn't you say something? And I'm like, any animal, deer, when they hear a snap, they freeze. There's no difference between fight, flight, or freeze. And I wish people would understand that freezing is every bit as valid as human and as reptilian as fighting or running away.
It's actually more so. It's a more dangerous state, because if you can fight, you still have your brain online in a way. If you can run, you still have it online. But the minute you freeze, the system's in a collapse state. So it's a much more dangerous state.
Well, what I mean is so many times, like there's this one woman, she told me about how she was on the beach and a guy came up, started grabbing her in the middle of, there's no one around in Santa Monica, started grabbing her apart and she just froze.
Of course.
And I said, you know what? That was okay. That was every bit as valid and human as others. But the thing is her friend, you're the only person to tell me that. Everyone else was, why didn't you run away? Why didn't you do this? Why didn't you do that?
The body's locked down.
But the thing is I want people to understand that it's okay. You didn't do anything wrong. You freezing, because so many people look at like, why didn't she just get up and walk away? And it's like, because like you said, she's in the middle of it. She said yes to this, but now she's not liking it. Again, people don't know that they can give consent. It's reversible. And I would hope that you would establish that in the middle, especially with someone you barely know, because they need to know that it's okay to say yes and no. So I go through a big spiel about that. So you mentioned about, getting trained, understanding communication, and guys know when to walk away, know that it's okay to end the scene. She'll respect you more, and you'll probably get another chance at it later. If you are like, nah, I got to do it now. Okay.
It's so interesting as you're talking, Paul, because, for a long time, and, it's gotten better, people were like S&M was sort of this weird kind of back alley thing, like in the 50s.
It was, though. It was really hidden type of thing.
And so the more, I think, with the advent of internet pornography and 50 Shades of Grey, it's like the BDSM community has come into mainstream. But as you're talking, I'm thinking, wow, just the average person that has sex can learn so much from this community, because this community has rules and regulations and agreements and contracts that they abide by. But your average people going out on a date for the first time or having sex for the first time have none of it. They're just sort of groping and muddling through it and, freaking out because they can't do this or that.
And I've had a lot of women be like, yeah, this guy said he was a dom. Like, there are tons of guys on dating sites saying they're a dom. And I always say, ask them who they've trained with.
Right.
And if
What
they're
does
like,
that mean?
I read a book or what.
Right.
If they haven't trained, if they can't rattle off like Orpheus and Midori and, if they can't just start rattling off instructors, then I wouldn't let them flog. I wouldn't.
That's right. They're just saying, I like to dominate women.
Right.
Is what they're saying.
Yeah.
They're using the language of that.
Women, if you want to have someone do a scene, I always suggest going to a dungeon where there are dungeon monitors and you get references. Don't let just some guy in his house.
Or somebody you find on like a dating site.
You mentioned therapy. One of the things is somebody is like, why would someone who was abused want to be spanked? Or why would somebody, maybe a woman who had trauma, who got maybe molested as a child, want to drop back into being a 12-year-old again? And I said, because she gets to decide when it starts and stops. And that's a power she didn't have.
That's right.
A long time ago when that trauma was being inflicted.
Right. So I would imagine that can be really curative and helpful to people also if they go back and they do it again and they get to do it differently, because the body responds to that. I mean, we actually do that in somatic therapy, where if somebody's making a motion with their hand, we ask them to complete that motion that they couldn't complete now. If they're talking, let's say, and they have a fist and they're talking about their brother that beat them up, and you're saying, well, what does that fist want to do? Well, I wish, I'd like to punch him in the face. Can you imagine punching him? Yeah, just go ahead and punch him and get him to make that movement over and over so the body completes what it couldn't then.
Yeah.
And you're doing this sexually.
Yeah.
Which therapists can't do.
Yeah, exactly.
What was striking to me about what you're talking about is that you've really devoted your life to knowing who you are sexually, and that keeps evolving and shifting and changing, and that you're passing that on to other people. And it's always striking to me how few people, adult people, just don't really know who they are sexually. They don't know what they like, what they don't like. They certainly don't talk to their partners about it. So I think kind of the big takeaway here is really take some time to find out who you are sexually. Know yourself.
And the problem with that, though, and this could go into another big topic, is when you start knowing who you are and you want to tell somebody and you tell them and they're like, ew, ew.
Yeah.
I'm like, you're not right for me. If that's an ew.
That's right.
That's, because I don't know if you agree with this, but if I tell someone like, hey, I'm into water sports, back and forth, I like it. If they go, ew, I can tell they haven't even thought about it. They just immediately. But if they go, you know what, I tried that, or I looked at it, I don't know if I'm into it.
Right. Or what do you like about it? Because I'm kind of not that into it, but what do you like about it? Like, there's no curiosity.
And that's one thing I tell men and women. If someone says they say something you don't like, ask them what they're into.
Right.
Because by the time they get through explaining, by the time when I get through explaining one of my like icky kinks, women are like, man, that was really hot the way you died. I just didn't have any idea. It would be, okay, well, let's try that. Right. You made it sound really good. So.
But I think that's what happens in couples. It's like one person will say something, the other person rolls their eyes and they just shut down the conversation because they're uncomfortable. As opposed to saying, wow, I want to know more about myself, or I want to know more about my partner. Like, why would they like that? Or that sounds so unusual. Or what does it say about me if I engage in that? Because people don't want to see those submissive and dominant and icky parts of themselves. They just want to keep it all sanitized in a way.
I think you teach people how to communicate with you. You teach your partner how to communicate with you by going ew or rolling your eyes. Right. You train them. This is what happened to me. I was like, well, I'm never going to freaking mention that again. She just lit up. Okay. And then maybe I'll find someone online who won't go ooh, who won't oh. I mean, I think you maybe, I don't know.
I think you're right about that.
You teach people how to communicate with you.
Right. The reactions that we have telegraph to our partners what they can and can't say, what isn't okay. And all too often people shut down the conversation very quickly because of their own discomfort.
Yeah.
So I think the more curious we can be, the more open-minded we can be, then we can find out about other people, and it really drops our judgments. It doesn't mean that we want to do it.
Yeah. But again, here's something you had talked about, men not knowing what to do. I like to say that men need to be able to express their emotions, feelings, and carnal desires in a way that is authentic, but then also gives a woman space to say yes or no.
That's lovely.